In the previous video, we talked about the regular progressive tense forms. Today, we're going to be talking about irregular forms. You know, the oddball ones, the ones that always make Spanish a little hard. Some verbs don't follow traditional progressive conjugations and have their own forms. These verbs are mostly double vowel verbs, usually with two E's or an E and I, and have two consecutive vowels, but some are stem changing verbs as well. Here's the gist. If it has a double vowel, or is the verb ear, of course it's that ear, that little two-word troublemaker, instead of the yendo, it would be a yendo with a Y, not an I. To see the difference, you can look at two verbs, creer, which means to believe, and ir, which I mentioned earlier, the little troublemaker. Instead of creyendo, it would be creyendo with a Y. Instead of the yen, instead of the yendo, it wouldn't be a yen, it would be a yendo. Again, notice how similar the pronunciations are, so you do have a little bit of leeway when you're speaking Spanish. But when you write it down, you be sure to keep this in mind. If it's an O to UE stem changing verb, change a O to a U. In this case, I'm going to look at two verbs, morir and dormir, which are actually the only two stem changing verbs that follow this pattern, which have an irregular progressive tense form. They are muriendo or durmiendo. The O changes to a U. If it's an E to I stem changing verb, on the other hand, you would replace the E with an I. Again, we're going to look at two examples of verbs, pedir and decir. Pedir would become pidiendo. Again, the E changes to an I. Decir would become diciendo. To help you with this, I'm going to look at a few examples. Estoy yendo a mi casa. I am, going to my house. Estamos durmiendo a mi cama. We are sleeping in my bed. Estoy pidiendo las pizzas. I am ordering or asking for the pizzas. Está creyendo. You are, or he or she is, believing. There are a million more examples like this, but I'm not gonna list them out. And remember, I made true on my promise there was gonna be a quiz in this one. Well, here it is. For the first 7 questions, you need to fill the blank with the correct progressive tense verb. Here are the sentences. Estoy blank, arreglar. Está blank, lavar. Estáis blank, comer. Están blank, vivir. All four of these are regular. So arreglar, lavar, comer, and vivir should be filled with regular. Estás blank, morir. Estoy blank, servir. Servir is a stem changing verb, and its stem changes from E to I when you conjugate it. Estamos blank, creer. For servir, remember, you need to remember the rule that I talked about earlier, how stem changing verbs, progressive tense forms also changes. And I'm going to cover also the previous things we talked about. However, I'm not going to cover gustar and encantar because it's kind of hard to make a quiz out of that. I'm going to use la fecha and la hora, or the time. So I want you to translate these two sentences. It is April 2nd, which is the day I'm recording this video, and it is 9:50, which is also the time. I want you to pause the video and see if you can find out these answers, because I'm going to move on. Well, here are the answers. Okay, I actually made a mistake. Let me change this. Estoy arreglando, which makes sense because arreglar is a regular verb and follows the regular progressive tense conjugation. So you add an A-N-D-O, or ando. For the next one, it's está lavando. If you watch my first video, you know I talked about the verb lavar in my progressive tense video. I was using it as an example, which it means to wash. Estáis comiendo. Again, I also use comer here too. And están viviendo. Remember, the ER and IR progressive tense forms stay the same, always. And for the three irregular ones, estás muriendo. Again, notice how the O changes to a U. Estoy sirviendo. Since I told you earlier servir was a stem changing verb, so the E changes to an I in servir. And for the last one, estamos creyendo, which means we are believing. It's not an it's not an IENDO, but rather a YENDO. And for the two sentences, it's hoy es el 2 de abril, which means it is April 2nd. And for the time one, there are two possible answers. You could use the menos form, or you could use the mas, or you could use e. Generally, I would prefer using menos here because it's past half hour, but both answers work. The two answers are son las 10 menos 10 or son las 9:50. Thank you so much for watching, and next video, I think I'm going to do an affirmative to command one.